Moxley versus Omega, Full Gear 2019, Wrestling Masterpiece or Barbed Wire Abortion, this week on Wrestling with the Business.
Welcome to Wrestling with the Business. My name's Matt Lambert. With me, as always, is Jeremy Bodette. And we had a hell of a pay-per-view this past weekend. AEW Full Gear. If you watched us last week, you saw us give our predictions and what matches we were most looking forward to. It was a relatively good show. I'd say at least a 4 out of 5, if not better. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm tempted to agree with that. Everything was good, and I was highly satisfied on everything through the main event.
Yeah. We're not going to go through the whole card, but we're going to talk about probably the most controversial match of the evening. It was the last match on the card because it was completely unsanctioned by AEW. It was Jon Moxley versus Kenny Omega in a Lights Out match. There was a lot of spots in this match that definitely hasn't been seen on TV on a wrestling program in quite some time. So what were some of the spots in this match that really stood out to you?
Let me start by just running through a list, it's not comprehensive, of all of the type of weaponry that was used throughout the course of the match. So just right off the top of my head, the trash can, specifically the trash can lid. There was broken glass that was utilized, the infamous barbed wire bat and barbed wire broom. It was sort of used multiple shows prior. These got a lot more action. There was what was described on the program as a barbed wire spider web, which I think is more aptly described as a barbed wire box spring mattress. Did I say broken glass?
Yep.
There was lots of broken glass. And probably the most gimmicky prop that was used throughout the entire night was a large, probably 8x10 plywood board with about 30 set mouse traps attached to it. That was brought into the ring. In addition to that, the match ended with Moxley basically tearing... we're used to kind of seeing wrestlers tearing the matting off of the concrete floor to do something. Moxley actually started doing some of the roadies' job for him and started tearing the ring apart, pulling the padding up to expose the boards underneath, and that's how the match finished. So that's a very brief, non-comprehensive list of some of the junk that occurred during this match. I've got several complaints. Maybe we could address them one by one, and maybe you could make me feel a little bit better about this match. What do you think?
Well, I'll certainly try my best. I gotta say, I loved this match. Like I said, there hasn't been a match this brutal, this hardcore, if that's what you want to call it, on wrestling TV in probably 20 years since the ECW days. And it was very clear they were going to shots of people in the crowd, and it was very clear that they didn't know what they were watching. A lot of them were scared or sickened or whatever, but I loved it. I thought it was great. It was a great match for these two, especially for Jon Moxley to be involved in.
We don't want to forget about the chain. The chain was also used. Yep.
The big old...
And what was it like a box cutter or something? What was
It was like a screwdriver or like a...
Yeah, right. It was like a small hand screwdriver or something like that.
Point
I think that's
like
pretty
that.
much the list. I think that's pretty much everything that was used.
Yeah, that was pretty much everything. And, I mean, we got to mention the barbed wire on the bat and on the broom was live barbed wire. I mean, when they connected with those, they were breaking skin.
Yeah, there was
Especially
no
the one shot.
there
with
was
the
no
broom.
intentional juicing going on.
Yeah, the one shot with the broom onto the back of Moxley's head split him right open. He started gushing after that. But, well, so obviously you didn't care much for the match, so what was it about that you didn't like?
Look, I like a good hardcore match, don't get me wrong. But this one was almost for me, it was almost a cartoon. Okay, this was ridiculous in my opinion. Hardcore matches are supposed to simply provide a different angle, a certain level of shock value that should still be there, but it should still respect the art form that is professional wrestling. And I feel that there was no respect for the art form whatsoever here. The whole thing came across as very staged. One of the things that makes these hardcore matches so interesting is you don't really know what's going to happen next. Everything looks unplanned. It looks like nobody planned anything from the beginning. They throw the apron up, and what's going to come out? Is it going to be a table? Is it going to be a chair? Is it going to be even Triple H's whole sledgehammer gimmick, I find way more believable than when Omega went underneath the ring and he pulled out that ridiculous board filled with those ridiculous mouse traps. It was very gimmicky. It was very campy. That along with a whole series of other things. The barbed wire bat, okay, fine. That looked brutal. The broom, kind of cheesy, but he's the cleaner. Okay, I can do with that. The chain, okay, they did a lot of moves landing on the chain, so that was kind of neat. I could kind of see that. I even bought the screwdriver, but that barbed wire bed that they had a group of people trooping out in the middle of the match, it pulled me way out of the match. There was no art form. It was violence for violence sake. And if I want to see that, I'll watch videos of, poor journalists getting their heads cut off by ISIS. Okay, I don't go to professional wrestling for that kind of activity.
Okay, I can understand your reasonings, but my thinking is, as far as the mousetrap board, we have seen, again, going back to the ECW days, going back to the Attitude Era days in WWE, we have seen absolutely everything there is to see in hardcore matches. We've literally seen kitchen sinks used in hardcore matches. I think this is just something new to use in a hardcore match, something that hasn't been seen. Like I said, I think they even mentioned it on commentary, calling it a Johnny Knoxville jackass type stunt. And that's exactly, it's something from Jackass. It's never been used in a wrestling ring. It's never been used in a wrestling match. So I think it's just trying something new, trying something different. Yeah, it might be a little hokey, it might be a little gimmicky, but I think it was a fun little spot. And it's not like they focused on that board throughout the match. They brought it out, they used it, they got rid of it, they moved on.
It never broke kayfabe for you. It never broke kayfabe.
I mean, there are so many times, if I'm really sitting there and analyzing that, I'm pulled out of kayfabe, 100 times in every show. The idea is just to get lost in it, just to have fun with it.
Well, and I'm all about getting lost into it, but then when they're standing on the edge of the walkway waiting for 6 men to pull this monstrosity out from the back, they didn't even have it staged. If they had it placed like after the entrance but right before the bell or something like that, then I could at least be like, okay, they're trying to keep kayfabe up. But they're like working their way up the ramp and they're just like standing there not really doing anything. And then the camera angle shifts and you can see the guys coming out. Right. And it pulled me way out of it.
You can't say they weren't doing anything. Omega just put Moxley down with the screwdriver to the head, cutting him open, jabbing him open. The idea of the barbed wire bed, the whole backstory to this was Kenny Omega for the past several months has been so focused on Moxley that he's been losing all of his other matches, and he hasn't been the same guy that he was in Japan, where he was known as the best wrestler in the world. So I think this barbed wire bed was kind of his way of finally all the frustration, all the aggression getting pent up into this huge monstrosity that he put together just so that he could take out this guy that has been in his head for so many months.
I'm sorry. Did they make it clear in the commentary that was Omega's making?
Omega was the one who was calling it out. Yeah, he was talking to the Bucks, telling them to bring it out.
Okay. All right.
I'm pretty sure they mentioned. I'm pretty sure Excalibur mentioned how on being the Elite for the past several months on their YouTube show, how that's basically where the whole story has been happening behind the scenes.
I mean, you can see it played out. I mean, Omega's better than the wrestler that he's been. They did a good job playing it out on screen. The build-up was excellent. I mean, I was extremely excited for this. And the fact that it was unsanctioned, I mean, for me, made it all the better. I actually liked the fact that these two people were sort of untethered. They didn't have to worry about their win-loss record. They didn't have to worry about any of it. It was all about settling scores. That got me really excited. And the beginning of the match got me really excited. I mean, going back to talking about breaking kayfabe, I mean, the ending of the match where he's actually like tearing the ring apart. I mean, there's no more physical way to break kayfabe. I mean, in the 90s, during the infamous curtain call, right before Bret Hart leaves WWF, a bunch of enemies hug each other on their way out. I'm sorry, not before Bret Hart leaves. Before Nash and Hall leave the WWF for WCW. Mm-hmm. There's this infamous moment where best friends backstage break kayfabe and they hug each other in front of the crowd. After they went off the air, right, this was just something for the fans to see that were in attendance. Okay, he's literally tearing the ring apart. He's literally pulling the padding off. Everybody can see how much padding is on the ring. They can see what the boards are made out of underneath it. They can see what's steel, what's wood, what isn't. I mean, he's literally tearing apart the kayfabe. There's no more physical way to do it. And I think that I just think that that's not respecting the art that's there. That's not respecting the stage. No one would go to watch a Shakespeare play in which the actor, starts ad-libbing at the end and takes an axe to the stage underneath him. Nobody would look at that and say, wow, that's fine art. That's brilliant. You have to respect the medium and the platform that you're working in. And he literally tore it apart. And I thought that you have to at least have some sort of homage. You have to have some kind of respect for the medium that you're working in. And it seemed like he was just, it was too uncontrolled. It was too out there. And have you heard, I mean, I know that Kenny Omega wasn't cleared for activity. Is that part of the story, or was he actually not medically cleared?
I think he was pretty banged up. I know he definitely had at least a black eye. His back was all banged up, scratched up, cuts and bruises. I don't think it was anything too severe. I think if it is legit, I think it's more precautionary than anything.
Yeah, I don't know. He bumped his head a couple of times, so it could have been concussion related. Yeah. The fact that they didn't give away too many details sort of gave me the impression that it was more like the story being played out or whatever.
Yeah, I would say so.
As opposed to actual, details or whatever. And if it was legitimate, something would have leaked, I'm sure.
As far as that being too uncontrolled, I think that was kind of the point. I mean, Moxley did not want to have an unsanctioned match. He wanted to have a legitimate match that counted in the records, where he could legitimately beat Kenny Omega, the, again, quote-unquote, best wrestler in the world. And it would count for something. The reason he went off so much was because Tony Khan told him this is going to be unsanctioned. You're the purveyor of violence. And that set him off, so he gave them what they wanted. So the whole tearing up the ring and everything else, that was all part of the story.
It led very well. I'll try and end this on a positive note. The transition into what happened this past Wednesday night with Moxley coming out sort of making the call. Nobody's man enough. I took down, the cleaner. I took down the Beastmaster. Nobody's willing to stand up. And then my man, Darby Allin, coming out, laying the smackdown, and answering the call. He's a guy that I really feel like, just the way his last hardcore match went, I feel like he respects the art a lot more. God only knows what's going to happen if this thing goes to the next pay-per-view. God only knows where Moxley's going to want to take it if this becomes a bigger thing. But I really feel like putting another guy with a significant reputation on the hardcore side into the ring with him, and someone that I respect. He's a guy that's doing crazy flips and turns off of the top turnbuckles. You have to pepper that kind of high risk, yeah, we're wrestling, but this is a little bit more intense sort of thing, instead of it just being this straight up street fight battle brawl that just... And by the way, here's another thing that bothered me. There was a lot of blood. There was not enough blood. Not nearly enough. There was a good amount of blood. There's a solid amount of blood. But not in proportion to what it is. Yeah. Usually, right, the way the juicing happens is there's some big incident, there's some big hit, there's some big whatever, and then all of a sudden the blood starts, right? The only one that I can think of off the top of my head that was almost perfect was the Dustin versus Cody match. That was
a little too much blood.
Awesome. He went a little too deep with the cut, no doubt about it. And I think he might have done it a little too early. He maybe should have pushed it to a little bit later in the match. But that's kind of what you want to see. That really helps sell the move. It helps sell the match, makes things look even more real. And as the blood continues, it sort of takes everything from here to here, right? So, yeah, okay, that's an okay move. Becomes even more impactful when he hits the mat and you see the blood spatter or something like that. But this one, it was like a series of little tiny cuts along the back and along the neck. There was a little bit of bleeding around his neck, but there didn't seem to be any bleeding as a result of the screwdriver. There didn't seem to be any real bleeding as a result of the spider web. I didn't see any bleeding as a result of the glass, although Omega did a really good job of selling it with his hands on that first, what was it?
The spine buster something.
Yeah, I think it was a spine
buster. And the ref, too. After that slam in the glass, he counted a pin, and the ref is shaking his hand because he was counting the pin in the glass. There was a lot of good selling.
There was a lot of really good selling in that. So, I think that in general, they took it to that pulled me out of the kayfabe. I'm expecting this to be a bloodbath based on I'm seeing the same amount of blood now as I've seen in any other hardcore match, and yet these guys are taking each other to the frickin' woodshed, and nothing's coming out. This won't be the last time that we see Moxley in a hardcore match, and I just hope that he decides to sprinkle a little bit more art into it next time. This one was not a main event level match like I was hoping it would be, and I think he can do better.
We'll see. Next week, Moxley is set to face Darby Allin. It's not a hardcore match. It's just going to be a straight-up match.
It'll build up, though. This could easily build. This could easily be you start a nice little build here through the end of the year. This could end up being a nice storyline, I think.
I still think he's going to head towards the title. I don't think it's going to be a long feud.
Yeah, you got to ask what happens next. Not to get too off topic, but with Jericho retaining the title and then going into this tag match for the tag team titles, kind of felt a little bit like filler after the big Saturday night pop. So we'll have to see. I think this week will really tell us about the direction. Of course, with Cody spinning off with this whole MJF feud, it'll be interesting to see what they do with the title next and what happens. But hey, comment down below. What did you think? Did you think it was a barbed wire abortion like me? Or did you think it was a piece of wrestling masterpiece to be cherished forever like Matt does? And comment below. Like, share, subscribe. Seriously, engage with us. We want to know what you think. And we will, of course, embed some of the highlights down below so you can review it on your own and give us your own take on what you think.
And until next time, remember, always keep kayfabe, follow the money, and we'll keep wrestling with the business.